Hey, what's cracking everyone? My name is Ryan, and today I am finally ready to give my full thoughts and opinions on the ZMF Bokeh Open. I know it's been a couple of months now since I did the first impression video on this, but it came to me during my busiest time of year, and also there's quite a bit to unpack with the Bokeh Open, as is the case for many ZMF headphones. Now, enough with the excuses already, right? Let's take another look at the very stunning Bokeh Open. First off, the Bokeh Open is an open-back dynamic driver headphone, and it retails in for $1,000 minus a penny. This headphone launched with two different color options, being either Nocturne with a purple heart grille, like the one I have here, or you can get it in the Emberstone with a Bloodwood grille option. Both versions are made using a type of birch plywood called SpectraPly. SpectraPly is a type of wood with vibrant colors, which is obvious when you look at the Bokeh Open and its vibrancy. That's even a word, but I'm an audiophile and I'm allowed to make shit up. Now, before I get into this too far, I want to send a big thank you out to Zach and the ZMF team for sending over the Bokeh Open, along with all of the different pads and mesh options you can get with this headphone. Now, to be clear, I've not been asked to say anything particular at all about the Bokeh Open other than my own thoughts and opinions. Hey everyone, really quick, I'd like to remind you to like videos like this one if you do indeed like them. And also, please do subscribe to the channel if you'd like to support my growth along the way. Lastly, I also have a Patreon that you could join to further support the channel and even get into a special Telegram chat for all of my paid members. All right, with that, let's get back to the video. The driver of the Bokeh Open is a 50mm liquid crystal polymer, or LCP, dynamic driver. It comes in at just 80 ohms of impedance and has a sensitivity of just 103 decibels, making this, and its sibling the Bokeh Closed, the easiest and most portable ZMF to date for drivability. Also included is the Atrium Damping System, or ADS, which is now fully patented from ZMF and was first introduced with the launch of the Atrium. It's pretty cool technology to read about how ZMF came up with this system and how it incorporates the driver movement and back waves and how they control that. It's honestly really something I do suggest reading about on their site when you have some time, just maybe not right now. Now, the other unique thing to the Bokeh, both open and closed, is the use of the 3.5mm input jacks in order to be much more universal versus the typical mini XLR connector used in other ZMF headphones. When you order a ZMF headphone, you will be given quite a few options along with it. For the Bokeh Open, you'll be able to choose which color you want. Then, you can select whether you want the stock lambskin material, or you can go with an all-vegan option at no additional cost. You'll be able to choose a stock cable option of either balanced or unbalanced. Then you can even choose if you want to add a second set of pads, alternate mesh, or you can go all out and get the tuning kit, which comes with all pad and mesh options for $120 more. If you go that route, you actually end up saving $60 and open yourself up to a total of 9 different sound signatures you can play around with. Totally up to you, of course, and how you want to order this from ZMF. There's even an option to add an upgraded cable. Hell, you can even add a source option for the DACs and amps that ZMF sells on their sites. Now, if you do stick to the stock option, you'll get the Bokeh Open, a stock braided cable, the Bokeh clamshell case, either the Caldera Hybrid or Caldera Suede Alter Perf pads, depending on if you choose vegan or not, the ZMF owner card, and a lifetime driver warranty. Now, the chassis of the Bokeh Open is a black anodized aluminum. The adjustment rods are a polished and shiny metal. The strap up top is a ZMF crescent strap that comes with a very soft cowhide suspension strap. Then the grille on the birchwood cups is a first ever solid wood grille. I personally am a huge fan of the wood grille that they've done with the Bokeh, and think it is such a beautiful piece of audio art. The chassis does a full 180-degree swivel that will also have a decent amount of give to the tilt system that is on the cups. This makes for a pretty easy way to find a good and snug fit for each user. This is also assisted with the Caldera hybrid pads at the stock option, which is both protein leather and suede material that is ultra perf, aka plenty of vent holes. Of course, you could also go with the Caldera suede pads, which are HD ultra perf. Now, the pads on either option are generously open enough for bigger ears to fit nicely inside the cups and deep enough to not be crammed up next to the driver surface. What's new for the Bokeh Open are these plastic and flexible rings that I was sent. Now, I'll discuss this further when I talk about pad swapping options, but this is a bit of a game changer for when you go to swap the pads on the headphone for those novice swappers. The total weight of the Bokeh Open is about 480 grams, which is not exactly light as a feather, but the crescent strap system and chassis make for a very balanced weight experience, and I have enjoyed the comfort of the headphone quite a bit. If you do experience any kind of hot spots or discomfort, the headband itself is bendable and something you can find even more information about doing so on the ZMF site. And I'll go ahead and link that in the description for you guys. I think it's important to address the elephant in the room before we go any further, and that is my bias towards ZMF. Now, it's safe to say we all have some sort of bias, whether it's conscious or not, and I think anyone who has watched my videos knows my love and appreciation for ZMF. What's also important to note is that my appreciation for ZMF does not mean I blindly love every headphone that they've made. However, I have been pretty transparent when it comes to the Bokeh Open and just how much I have enjoyed and been enjoying this headphone. So does that mean this review is going to be all positive, no negative, all shill, no thrill, and no drama for your mama? No. Well, except maybe the drama for your mama part. I'll save that for something else. I think it's safe to say that this sound signature fits my preferences like a glove, and all of you should know that up front. Now, I'm also going to discuss the different pad and mesh options that you can get and how that will change up the sound. I'll also be discussing some headphones that should compete with the Bokeh Open, such as the O2R Classic, the Meze 109 Pro, and even the Hyphaman Aria Organic. So as I said at the top, there is a lot to unpack in this video, so in the words of every NPC in a video game, please don't skip my dialogue. In my time spent with the Bokeh Open, I've paired this up with plenty of different sources. I've used my higher end desktop setup of the Holo Cyan 2 for my DAC, along with the Cayin HA-3A for my amp. Then I also listened on my Schiit Modius E DAC paired up to the Midgard amp. Now in gaming, I've used the Schiit Gunnr and Sound Blaster G8 I recently reviewed. For portable situations, I use the iBasso DC Elite and WooTube Mini. Through all of it, I've learned just how versatile the Bokeh Open is. It honestly didn't deviate very much on different sources, but I do still believe in synergy of gear. My most enjoyable experience came when using the iBasso DC Elite for the Bokeh Open, as well as the WooTube Mini. Interesting for sure when you consider that this headphone is said to be the most portable, and I had the most enjoyable sound impressions using portable source gear. If I had to pick just one, it would be the DC Elite. The current output of that DAC just meshed so very well with the Bokeh Open and gave me a very just robust and encompassing sound experience. It truly is my go-to option for this headphone. My short version of the sound profile of the Bokeh Open is to say that it is a well-balanced response that extends pretty flat into the sub-bass region and sparkles up top into the treble. It does all of this while maintaining a neutral yet attack-driven mid-range that brings a colorful and musical experience to my music and gaming. I should mention that the sparkle I'm referring to is not stabby or fatiguing, at least to my ears, which is another bonus notch for the Bokeh. Now let me break this down further and discuss exactly what I'm talking about through a few track examples. Before I talk about the bass response, I should note that all of my impressions right now are focused on the stock option of the Caldera Hybrid Ultra Perf pads in stock mesh. The first track I want to discuss is called Testarossa by Matt Lange. This track starts off with just a mellow ambience of sound that builds into this low-end bass that just sustains itself throughout. Now on the Bokeh, this is full, weighted, and never falls off or decays away. It's not rumbly, so not something I would call elevated, but it has excellent quality to the lower extension. Now, while this is happening, there is this three-dimensional type sensation as different sounds poke around you from left to right, in and out in a binaural type experience. It's a cool and pretty fun track that I recommend checking out. Then to showcase how this bass hangs on and doesn't give out on you is the track Better Than Gold by Justin Hawkes and Andrew Hellier. Honestly, this may be my song of the year for 2024 and just how much I enjoy listening to it. My kids, my family, we all dig this track. At around the 1:30 mark, this bluegrass and electronic combination track comes alive. I'd say if you have a headphone that delivers in the sub-bass response, you should feel a grip to the bass as it hits and stays. It'll make you want to crank that like Soulja Boy. Oh! One more track is Kissin' Blue by Yellow and Heidi Happy. Now, what you need to focus on with this track is the second bass note that hits. If you have a headphone that can extend low enough, then it should be felt and have some weight. That's exactly how I would describe it on the Bokeh. I've heard this track on other gear that doesn't extend as deep, and it's almost a non-existent second bass note. So hopefully that explains what I'm trying to portray. The bass response is truly one of the highlights of the Bokeh Open that I love so much for its extension without being overly elevated. It does remind me quite a bit of the extension I experienced with the tungsten double-sided, so I'd say that's a pretty good compliment to both headphones. Also, for being open back, it's another impressive accomplishment to hear. Now, mid-bass is not overly elevated either, in case you're wondering, but it maintains the attack and gives you slam without being boomy. Midrange has a neutrality to it without coming across as boring to my ears. I think this is due to a touch of forwardness and definitely the amount of attack I get out of it. Once again, the track Feeling Snaky by Tony Joe White is a fun blues track I just came across. The electric guitar on this track just has this attitude and grip to it that shows both an accurate timbre to go along with enough coloration to make it musical. There is a fullness to the mid-range as well that I appreciate. I also discovered a tearjerker of a track called Mama This One's For You by Beth Hart. I talk about Beth Hart quite a bit, and for good reason. I enjoy her music, but her unique voice and gravel can showcase aspects of the mid-range on just how much definition you can get. I wouldn't call it the best of resolution for mid-range for a headphone in this price range, but I would call it a pretty damn good enough contender. Now, you'd have to enjoy her vocals to appreciate this track, but I dare you to listen and not get caught up in the moment. I mean, that's what it's all about, at least for me. This track is all about her vocals and the piano. Both are beautiful in my opinion on the Bokeh, and even the keys of the piano have enough definition that I don't feel like I'm missing anything in that range. Lastly, to bring up some excitement would be the track Going to Hell by The Pretty Reckless. That's hard to believe that the innocent little girl named Cindy Lou Who from the Grinch movie would turn out to be a hell of a metal band singer, but she is. This track will give you plenty of that rhythm and pace, grit, and more attitude than you can shake a stick at with the Bokeh Open. Drums punch right along, and snares have a fast snap to them to rope you into this genre of music. It's exactly the kind of mid-range I dig. It is a touch forward, and some artists can be a bit more focused than others, so it's going to depend on preferences as things like this typically do. Now, the other thing I want to note is that during busy tracks from artists like, say, Go-Go Penguin, I didn't feel like the Bokeh got lost or cluttered. There is ever so much a very slight bit of haze every now and then that I get that tells me that there are some technical limitations to the Bokeh, but again, it's not one that I think is a deal breaker by any means, since it isn't lacking in other aspects. At its stock option, I don't find the Bokeh to be stabby or fatiguing in the treble. It's definitely extended and airy enough that I would not call this a warm signature. Perhaps at times it can be edgy, but never going over the edge for my tolerance level. I'd call this in between a warm and cold that tilts towards warmth, sort of like a cozy feeling on a winter day. Audiophile. Now, the track Window Pane by Opeth showed me this at the 220 mark. The guitar here gets this moment where it's high into the notes and could possibly be bothersome on a brighter headphone. I didn't pick up any of that on the Bokeh, nor did I pick it up when I played through plenty of other blues tracks that hit those really high notes. It's almost sweet in a way that's pleasing to my ears without being stabby. I also don't find sibilant singers to have any kind of extra sizzle to their voices, which was a nice touch. I should add that I feel the Bokeh Open to just be that, open and spacious. The track Yonder by Clone starts off with a thunderstorm. Now I'm guessing this isn't a live recorded storm. Nonetheless, it feels like it's all around you, as in like I'm standing outside in it. I also found this showcased on many live performances and gaming as well. This headphone has a good amount of width and staging to it. No, it's not an 800S type staging, but it's definitely not an intimate experience either. Now I'd say the technical performance is on par for a headphone in this price range and perhaps lagging a little behind others here, but personally, I've been okay with that. Instrument separation is still good, and I get a sense of layering and depth that provides enough discerning information when listening to big arrangements of music that expand out far and wide. It is not what I would consider being a strong suit of the Bokeh, just to be clear. How's that for a pun? Now, imaging is spot on and nothing that I felt that need to be said further other than simply that. All right. Along with the Bokeh, ZMF did send me over the entire tuning kit option for this headphone. I sat down and went through every option, which there are 9 of them in total, to get a good idea of what you'll be able to change up with the sound. I'll quickly start with the alternate mesh. The solid Titan mesh that is included and going with no mesh at all will pretty much pertain to one main aspect of the headphone. That would be the upper frequencies. I honestly didn't find enough variations using any of the mesh options with the bass response to feel that I needed to discuss that. What the solid mesh will bring is simply blunting out the top end of this headphone. Now, I don't think it makes it dark necessarily, but you'll definitely tame down the top end quite a bit. If you find yourself sensitive to that region, then the solid mesh could really assist with bringing that down for you. Then on the opposite, going with absolutely no mesh at all can really open up the top end. This is where I actually did find moments of fatigue and harshness, and depending on the pads. I really think this could be a situation where listening to more classical focused music, or music where you want every single detail you can squeeze out of the headphone to be the difference needed. Remember those plastic rings I mentioned earlier? Well, the way these work will assist with swapping pads. Now, I'm not yet an expert ZMF pad swapper, another audiophile term I just made up. These rings simply go in between the foam of the pad and the mesh lining. You have to kind of bend it to get them to fit inside, but once you do, the pad won't lose its shape when you go to fit them on the cups. Fitting the ZMF pads on the cups is a trade skill all of its own, and the rings truly do make a difference so you don't get too frustrated when doing a pad swap. I still haven't perfected it, but the rings are like training wheels for the pads. Oh, and I did ask Zach about it. These rings will be included with all Bokeh headphones. If you already have a Bokeh, then you can reach out to ZMF to get a set of rings for your pad swappage for a small cost. Pretty sweet. The suede pads will bring you the most softened experience of all options. Bass response here is still extended very well for a suede, but it doesn't carry the same weight and attack to it. I also find it to decay quicker and just not sustain the bass response. This can be said for the mid-range attack as well. Then the top end of the treble can give you a bit of warmth. I know many out there may prefer this type of sound signature, and it's a nice option that can be had for this headphone. Now, I will say that I enjoyed the suede much more than I thought I would, if that matters at all. Lastly would be the all lambskin pads. This pad brings the most perforation of all pad options and also is the most energetic of the 3. Now, I say energetic because I feel this has the most impactful bass and mid-range punch and slam to it. This also opens up the treble the most and provides probably the most sparkle. The good news is that I didn't find it to be a dramatic difference over the hybrid pads. So if you wanted to get just a bit more over the hybrid, this would be the option for you. Now, if it matters, I can tell you my preference depending on the mesh. For stock mesh, I prefer the all lambskin pads. This provided a bit more energy to my music without being too harsh or stabby up top. And then for no mesh, I actually prefer the hybrid pads. Honestly, for the same reason that I preferred the all lambskin with the stock mesh, but then for the solid mesh, I either preferred the hybrid or the lambskin pads. Both still gave me enough of the top end to not be too blunted, and then my least favorite, to probably no surprise, is the solid mesh with the suede pads. I just found this way too relaxed for my tastes. I did spend some time comparing this headphone to others that I have found in the house. First, on the lower end of the price range, I compared to the Meze 109 Pro. To be honest, both headphones are very similar to one another. Both have a good extension of bass and also treble up top. I do find the 109 Pro to be a touch more forward over the Bokeh while also being a bit more intimate as well and a touch more hot in the treble. They are so close together that I would almost not recommend having both unless you had the entire tuning kit of the Bokeh Open to allow more variations from the 109 Pro. Now to me, the 109 Pro is like the Bokeh Open without the mesh, and the Bokeh does extend a bit lower before dropping off. I'd also say both are on par with each other on a technical standpoint. Then I compare to the RU Organic. First off, the Organic is a planar, so this alone will have its differences. I would say the biggest difference between the two of these would be the technical performance of the Organic. It truly is superior to the Bokeh here, assuming that you don't mind a brighter response. Also, the Bokeh carries more weight to its sound and will give you even more attack than the Organic. Now, I do find the two headphones to complement each other as well, if that's something you are looking into, as the Organic leans more towards cold, where the Bokeh leans more towards warm. Now, both for me anyway do very well with gaming. Lastly would be the O-Tour Classic. I didn't realize how good or not good the resolution on the Bokeh was until I listened to the O-Tour again. The O-Tour really is a treat for its mid-range abilities. Both are punchy, but the O-Tour wins for technical performance and also the ability to pair up with a tube amp to really flavor up the experience. The O-Tour can't compete with the low-end extension of the Bokeh, so that is where I think the Bokeh separates itself from the O-Tour. Again, it'll come down to preferences, if that wasn't the obvious answer. All right, and so in wrapping up my thoughts on the Bokeh Open, I'm gonna go right back to the top of the video again and tell you once again that this headphone truly fits my preferences like a glove when it comes to the sound signature. Now, what I think is very important to understand, and hopefully I portrayed this through the video, is I know that there's things about this headphone that aren't best in class for this price range. I know that there are going to be things that you can find in other headphones in the same price range that may be better or more suited for you. And that's something that is very important to understand. And I hope that you don't just take my word on this headphone, that you look up reviews, whether it's at HeadFi or whether it's on YouTube. Take a lot of different angles and perspectives. That is so important to do in this hobby. Because honestly, guys, it's not so easy to always get a listen for ourselves. I knew that when I first got into this hobby, and I relied on YouTube and I relied on written reviews to make informed decisions. And I gotta tell you, that is, again, just so very important. If you can listen for yourself, if you happen to go to a Cayin Jam, or if you happen to be, friends with somebody that owns something like this, your own ears is the best way to make a decision. But I get it. That's not always easy to do. And so you have to put some trust in people like myself or others in making that decision. And hopefully I've at least helped guide you along the way, as that's always my intention with these videos. All right, guys, that wraps up all of my thoughts on the Bokeh Open. At this time, if you have any thoughts of your own on this headphone or others compared to this, I'd love to know those in the comments down below. Now, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I would like to thank each and every one of you for watching. Take care out there, and I will see you in the next one.